Good morning, everybody, to the 34th meeting of the Wyoming Stable Token Commission. Today is February 19th, 2026, starting here at 9:05 a.m. Today's meeting will be chaired by Christy Racines, Auditor Chair, Madam Chairman. Shall we go ahead and get started with the roll call here? We will hold on the roll call momentarily.
Sorry for that. Go ahead, Anthony.
Thank you.
The treasurer should be joining us shortly.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So start with the roll call. Commissioner Naves.
Here.
Commissioner Pope.
Here.
Commissioner Revel.
Here.
And Chairman Racines.
Here.
Excellent. So, Madam Chairman, you do have a quorum. I will certainly let you know when we have Treasurer Meyer on, Commissioner Meyer. But to go ahead and get started, thank you all for making the time today to have this call virtually. It is the ongoing 2026 budget session at the Capitol, so we were not able to get a room. Those all have priority for the committee meetings that happen throughout the day. So we are fully virtual today, but this meeting is still open to the public. And I will note that we have Commissioner Wallace on as well this morning. Thank you for joining. So as for my disclaimers, key decisions pertaining to the Wyoming Stable Token Initiative will be made by the commissioners of the Stable Token Commission or the state legislature in public meetings such as this. Further, the only commissioners are those appointed by statute, the governor, or a majority vote of the commission. At this time, the Frontier Stable Token, or FRNT, issued by the commission, which is the first Wyoming stable token, is now available for purchase by the public on Kraken, a Wyoming domiciled cryptocurrency exchange. A link to the listing page up front is on our website's homepage. The front token has been deployed on mainnet Arbitrum, Avalanche, Base, Ethereum, Hedera, Optimism, Polygon, and Solana blockchains, and smart contract addresses are published on the Commission's website. Any centralized exchange claiming to sell or distribute front or Wyoming stable tokens besides Kraken should be considered fraudulent. Caution is advised for users looking to source front from decentralized exchanges. Please do not attempt to purchase tokens from unauthorized sources. Information outside of these public meetings should only be considered factual and legitimate if it is distributed through our official channels. At this time, these are limited to our website at stabletoken.wyo.gov, the Wyoming Legislature website at wyoleg.gov, and our social media channels with the @WyoStable username on Twitter and Warpcast. So with those disclaimers out of the way, Madam Chairman, typically we would have a quick review of the agenda. I'm seeing a nod, so I will go ahead. Thank you. So I will go ahead and share today's agenda on the screen, which I believe I should have the authority and ability to do that. So hopefully this is appearing for everybody. It will be a shorter agenda today. We will go through the meeting minutes and the monthly budget review as a standard. We'll have a brief stable token industry update, followed by the progress of our preliminary scoring for this first quarter 2026 exercise of our blockchain selection process. I will provide an update on the Frontier stable token and the issuance that we currently have in circulation. I will provide some context about the ongoing budget session and which bills currently up for discussion may impact the agency or the token itself. Go through some of the next steps, so what we can expect in March, and then talk about upcoming meetings, and then open the floor up for public comment, which will be limited to 3 minutes per speaking party or one question from an online participant. Speakers will be asked to provide their full first name, last name, and affiliation with the public record or Wyoming statute 16-4-403 subsection B. Decorum will be governed by the rules and standards of Management Council Policy 18-3 and Wyoming statute 16-4-406. So before we dive in, one thing I will just mention to this group is something that I believe Commissioner Meyer brought up in December or January, which is as we create more repeatable processes, as we streamline these processes, perhaps we have this quicker cadence of meetings where they have been shorter the last few sessions, or perhaps we switch to a quarterly session somewhere in the second half of
Give me a
2026.
cup of water, last one. Thanks.
Oh, and I will note that we do have Commissioner Meyer with us. Good morning, Commissioner Meyer. So I think that's something we can discuss after next month, because I do expect in March we will have, again, these standard updates, much like we will today, but there will also be some additional demonstrations, some additional policies to be amended or introduced. So again, perhaps we go into a quarterly cadence for these, but that will be the will of the commission. And we could certainly talk about that as we get a little bit closer. So with that said, Madam Chairman, I am happy to provide a review of the meeting minutes from our last discussion for review and approval by the commission.
Sure. I'm not sure if we need to review them. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes as presented? If so, I would entertain a motion, or well, let me first ask, is there any corrections or modifications to the meeting minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from January 15th, 2026.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chairman. The meeting minutes are approved. We will get a fully ratified version of these on our website over the course of this morning. So moving on to our next agenda topic, that is the monthly budget review as of January 31st, 2026. Now, doing this virtually may be a bit hard. I will note for the public that these are on our website under meeting materials. For the commissioners, you have them in the drive folder as well. We will go ahead and zoom in on some of this, but this is the very similar summary structure of our monthly expenses that we've been looking at for as long as we've been presenting them. And we will jump over to the January 2026 numbers, go through the appropriate line items for this prior month. So in terms of personnel, salary has remained consistent, no changes there. However, you'll note that in the second line here, which is benefits, there was a almost 27% jump. That's to an increase in Social Security contributions starting in calendar year 2026. So I believe that will be a higher number going into the future. We'll have to see. As you can see in some of the prior months, there is a little bit of a oscillating cadence, but we'll see how that shakes out. I will be keeping an eye on this particular line item for Social Security. Second item is travel. So you see that there is in-state travel for the team. Again, we did put kind of a soft moratorium on team travel through the end of the year and through the budget session. But this was an ask from the governor's office for my attendance in Laramie at the Security and Resilience Initiative hosted by JP Morgan at the university for several roundtables. So that is simply the overnight stay in Laramie and the gas back and forth. Beyond that, again, the moratorium holds, and we've already reimbursed all other travel, so no further expenses for the team on travel. Next line item is, I believe, office supplies and print, where we have historically not had much. But last month, I noted that we were looking to pay for the paper that our agency had used at the Idleman. However, when we did that payment, for whatever reason, in the A&I system in Wolves, that dollar amount that we paid came in as, because again, this is a report of expenses, it came in as kind of a credit. So that amount has been reversed and correctly expensed in this month. So the 1088 wipes out the 512 from last month and then stacks it back on top, right? So that is the majority of that charge. Next one up here is our hardware, software, and intangibles. That's this 1116 item here for January. Typically, that's a $400 to $500 line item a month. For January, we had our annual Adobe Acrobat subscription renewals. So that was about $675. That's why we have a blip up in the month-over-month charge for the hardware line item. Nothing in the miscellaneous items for January. For telecom, again, we're back to the standard $210 charge for all of our phones and the subscriptions associated with them. And then in the 900 series, it does seem that there is now more granularity here in the accounts that have been provided through the Wolf system. I think we had 4 accounts, now there's 7. I believe management services and financial services are new. Information research service might be new, but there's definitely more accounts here than there were in the past. That being said, it's a little easier to tag where our expenses are. So for January, again, first item there is for Paul Hastings. We do have them getting spun up on research around doing a yield-bearing stable token. We do expect that will take some time and some pretty serious thought and mapping. So we've engaged them on that, and that process is moving forward. Then we've got the monthly fees from Inca Digital and the monthly fees from the network firm as expected for the month of January. So when you take all of that together, the commission expenses to date are it's $3,025,000 of the $5.8 million available. So we've spent just over 52% of our BFY 25 budget. So we have a remaining budget of $2,774,641 and some change for the remainder of BFY. So we've got almost 48% of our budget for the remaining 5 months, which is only 21% of the biennium. So again, good fiscal stewardship there. And when we talk about the budget, we'll talk about some of the carryover implications of this. But again, we've got quite a bit left in the coffers for the rest of BFY 25. I don't have anything else to point out on the detailed version. If we thought that one was a little hard to read while we're all online, this one's certainly not going to be any fun either. But any questions on the January expenses?
I guess on the SEC, I mean on the yield bearing, we probably would have to be regulated by the SEC in that, I guess, if all things stay the same. And I haven't heard much about the Genius Act, whether there's anything in that that's going to allow a sovereign to do that rather than be under the SEC.
So through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, a couple of things on that. One is we won't be saying much about the Paul Hastings conversations because those are a privilege through our relationship with the AG.
Okay.
Because it's legal diligence. But what we will say is what we're investing, and I've said this in prior public conversations, while we are investigating exemptions that state have to the federal securities laws, there's also implication of state law, depending on how we construct the yield-bearing stable token, where we don't want to be, just because we have an potential exemption from federal purview, does not mean we want to go ahead and contravene the Wyoming state constitution.
Yes.
So there's going to be a pair of, those will be parallel path discussions, and then the technology will be the kind of piece going across all of them.
Okay.
Secondly, in regards to your question about the Genius Act, 2 things. One is I will note that in her public testimony to the Senate on Tuesday morning here in Wyoming, Senator Lummis did give her perspective that the Genius Act does specifically carve out sovereign issuers or states. Essentially, her position is the Wyoming Stable Token Program is not under the Genius Act either, which has been my perspective I put forth in our dialogue to date. And I want to be clear, that's my perspective.
Okay.
So while we may have, again, some exemptions there, Commissioner Meyer, what I will quickly note, this is the plurality of the update I had for the stable token industry update. At the federal level right now, the big argument is whether stable coins under the Genius Act will be able to provide some kind of yield or interest or reward, whether it's And typically Genius has already said it can't be the issuer giving those rewards. It has to be some other third party that's affiliated or not affiliated. So we'll talk a bit more about that, but that conversation is still very much ongoing in DC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Meyer. Any other questions on the January expense report? Hearing none, reverting back to our agenda, I will give a quick verbal update on the GASB presentation. So back in December, we gave a very high-level view of what that might look like to have GASB statements. They were not audited. They were very much in draft format. The main goal for us with that exercise was to reconcile all of the numbers from Wolves, our accounting platform in the state, plus the numbers from our blockchain transactions, plus the balances from Fiduciary Trust as our custodian, all in one place, and start putting that into the GASB format. So Joe Saldana, our CFO, has continued performing the exercise. It's currently undergoing, I think I have to review it. I'm probably the bottleneck on that one, but I will be reviewing that for the month ending January 31st. But I will note that we also had a presentation of prior balances and some of the financial statements to Auditor Racines, Commissioner Pope, and Commissioner Wallace. So we'll look to form a kind of a high-level ad hoc financial statement subcommittee. Maybe not one that meets every week as some of the other ones did, but just as we generate these reports to get additional eyes on them as we move forward. Because we do have time for this exercise. Our first audit as an agency will be as of June 30th of 2026. So we've got 4.5 months, but this is certainly something we want to give the appropriate amount of time and consideration to, because we are the first state issuer of a stable token. So we are doing our diligence going through this process like we always do, quite methodically. And we will bring that forward not only as our agency, but with support from some of the commissioners who are engaged in that topic as well. Any questions about the GASB presentation? Okay. Moving on, stable token industry update. Still a little bit of my own thunder there, but the plurality of the conversation right now is around the discussions in DC around the Market Structure Act for digital assets. Again, the Clarity Act in the House passed towards the end of 2025. So that is simply kind of sitting there. In the Senate, they are still negotiating the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, which Senator Lummis has worked on. And unlike the Stable Act in the House and the Genius Act in the Senate, those were always fairly close. And there was amendment processes along the way to bring them closer and closer into parity as they both mutually advanced in their respective chambers. With the Clarity Act and the RFIA, there are some pretty significant differences between those two bills, including the definition in the RFIA of an ancillary asset. There are some key structural differences in that one. So that's still yet to be seen how those will come together. But the current impasse seems to be the pushback of certain traditional financial sectors against the ability of stablecoin programs, I'll say writ large, to reward their consumers with some kind of financial benefit. So to take one step back, the Genius Act is quite specific that a permitted payment stablecoin issuer, or PPSI, cannot provide yield or interest or rewards. So Circle, for example, if you're a holder of USDC, you can't receive some reward just by doing that in a self-custody wallet through a relationship with Circle. However, Circle has a relationship with Coinbase that allows users, I believe it's with the Coinbase Prime kind of premium product right now, allows them to deposit or stake their USDC tokens on that platform and gain some percentage of interest, right? That's the reward. So that would be compliant under the Genius Act because Circle is not the one giving the reward. Coinbase is facilitating that. The pushback on the market structure bill that is seemingly trying to retroactively adjust the Genius Act would also preclude the Coinbase of the world from providing those rewards. So that's where a lot of the back and forth and the pushback has been. Again, we're a little bit outside of those conversations right now. We are certainly keeping an eye on it, but that is one of the holdups with getting the market structure bill done on the timeline that's been suggested. We heard it maybe would have gotten done the end of last year. I believe this week is the third meeting at the White House of the industry representatives who have been invited to negotiate this amongst the two different kind of sides. And then I heard that the current administration is looking to have a resolution in place between those two parties or two sides to the issue by the end of this month, early March, then followed by a floor vote in April. Again, we have seen these processes kind of drag on over time, so we'll keep monitoring it. But again, if it is to impact us anywhere along the way, we will certainly escalate that to the commission. Any questions? So first, I would ask through the chair, if there's anyone who's been tracking the situation who may have a different understanding than I do, please do feel free to correct anything that was said. But other than that, happy to answer any questions the commission might have on that topic.
Any questions for the director? Okay, go ahead.
All right. So next topic here, we'll keep this one to a verbal update as well, is the Q1 2026 blockchain selection exercise. So again, we do run this process every quarter, where the first month of the quarter is the commission's potential update of the criteria for becoming a candidate blockchain. We did not opt to make any criteria changes in January. So in month 2 is our preliminary scoring exercise, where once we have an understanding of those criteria in month 1, the team will reach out proactively to representatives who are developers, founders, foundations for these respective blockchain networks and platforms and say, we're collecting our data for this exercise. If you're interested in becoming one of our candidate networks, can you please respond with data across these criteria? And we do provide what our criteria and our metrics are, to be transparent. So I believe in the last quarter, maybe 2 quarters, we didn't have any submissions. This month we did. We had 4 submissions come in. Typically, again, we don't name who those submissions are until we have a chance to vet the numbers, then we'll present them in month 3. So we did get 4 submissions in this time around by Tuesday afternoon's deadline. And based on our agency's preliminary review of the preliminary submission, it's possible that 2 of those 4 networks will pass our binary criteria and make it onto scoring. So again, these teams have provided their own metrics. Now it's incumbent on our team for the next 30 days to validate that information and present those findings to the commission in March, or the 3rd month. Any questions on the blockchain selection exercise? Okay. Hearing none, happy to go on to our next topic, which is front issuance. So as this commission well knows, the Frontier stable token was pushed live for public sale on Kraken and on the Solana network on January 7th. Since then, we've issued about 1.5 million tokens. And I actually realize my haste here, we've kind of skipped over the attestation report, which we can turn to because it's kind of part and parcel of the same topic. We've issued about 1.5 million of Frontier tokens, and you can already see what that looks like through the attestation report. So if you were to scroll down to page 4, in our attestation report, you can see that we have the balances of front on each network is public. If you were to click on any of these addresses, that would bring you to the block explorer. You can see it in real time. Again, this is a snapshot as of January 30th, but all this information is there. You can see that it's just under 1.5 million. And one of the other things you can note from this presentation here is we have launched on the Hedera blockchain, particularly their EVM compatible version of the network. There is a small amount here of 100 front. That is due to the fact that we are still doing some of our testing internally for turning on the rails for the public to utilize that as well. And I will be clear, there's different types of testing. UAT, or user acceptance testing, has been completed on our side. That's making sure all the functions of that platform work as we intend them to. However, just yesterday we set up the cross-chain bridging, so we'll still need to test that before we push this kind of live. So that is the amount of tokens in circulation. And then you could already see through the reserve assets that in the trust account, we've got an exact one-to-one matching of the number of tokens in circulation. And we are already accruing some of the interest income in that liquidity fund account, which is the over collateralization. So right now we're about 1% over collateralized for the time being. As more orders come in, that number will go down. As more interest income comes in, that number will go up. But point here is that we are already at a point where this is generating some dollars that should hopefully be annuities for the state going forward. Yes, it's still early for us, but this is kind of what the motion in the right direction will look like.
So do we have, we don't have the interest rate that those are generating, do we, on any of those? I guess we could get that. I'm wondering if that's
We do. We do.
Okay. Yeah.
So we see it here. So for these repos, these are at 366.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And the
I see that. Yeah. I guess another question I have, as far as, most of those guys are, under 100,000. So if somebody comes in and wants to, can they identify the blockchain they want to be on?
So through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, excellent question. We have automated forms for issuance and redemption orders. And on both of those, if there's an issuance request, the licensed service provider, aka that qualified reseller that's gone through our KYB, they will specify which chain they want their tokens on. And we go through a process of allow listing all of their wallets and doing test transactions with all of their wallets before we kind of open up the gates to go to transact back and forth.
Okay. All right. Good. So basically, if you want to pick Avalanche, you can pick Avalanche, or Ethereum, you can pick Ethereum, or any of our qualified coins or blockchains. Okay. Great.
Through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, that is 100% correct. Yep. And through the chair, recognizing that Commissioner Nabez has a hand up.
Thank you, Anthony. So thank you, Christine. So looking at the issuance that we currently have, Anthony, what are some of the hurdles that we are noticing with broader adoption, and what are the approach that we're trying to take to potentially increase that adoption?
Yep. So there's kind of a number of directions to go in here. So one thing worth noting is, again, we are on Kraken on the Solana network. We are having discussions with Kraken about expanding the number of networks we are on. To go back to Commissioner Meyer's question a second ago, it's great that we could have more LSPs on board that can receive these tokens across any number of chains that we support. But for retail, there's essentially one chain to go to, and that's Solana. Yes, you can bridge it to other networks through Stargate. It does become a little cumbersome. So the ability to have that purchase native on each chain on Kraken is something we are actively talking to their team about. Beyond that, we are certainly talking to a number of other exchanges, a number of different payment platforms, a number of community banks and credit unions about putting this technology kind of behind the scenes into their operations. We, as you know, have been speaking with multiple state agencies, both in Wyoming and other states at this point, that are interested in using our technology for the cost efficiencies, the transparency, the settlement times. There's a number of those conversations, but this is where we structurally do have some bottlenecks, right? We have a one-person compliance team who's responsible for reviewing dozens at this point of LSP submissions. So I think there needs to be understanding as we bring these things forward. There needs to be prioritization on our side, which there is. And this will take some time to kind of get the network effect that we're building from the ground up rather than from the top down.
Thank you, Anthony. I don't have any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Naves. I think that was your question kind of prompted much of the dialogue I wanted to have anyway. One other option that I would mention is the trading pairs. Again, we have front for US dollars, so you can deposit $100 into Kraken and buy the token with that. We've also now opened up the ability to swap essentially the USDC stablecoin from Circle for Frontier stable tokens as well, with that liquidity being supported by Cumberland DRW. That's helpful for us because, again, it kind of increases the adoption there. But we are also looking at the ability to do pairs between the Frontier stable token as the dollar denominated leg of things and a Solana token, SOL on Solana or ETH on Ethereum. It's not clear to us if we want to go down that path at this time. One of the things that I was going to mention along the way here is there's, for those who've been paying attention, quite a bit of volatility in the cryptocurrency markets. We've gone, Bitcoin's pretty much down from half of its all-time high. Stable tokens have been relatively untouched. It's still at about a $300 billion market cap. It's down less than 1% over the last 30 days. The rest of the market's had a big shakeout. If we wanted to do trading pairs of other cryptocurrencies with the Frontier token, managing that liquidity becomes much, much, much more expensive. And it's not clear if we're going to want to take that burden on in a time where things either go in either direction, but will likely continue to be volatile for some time. Any other questions on the front issuance or I guess the attestation report at this point? Which again, most of this is kind of boilerplate, which is the intent, right? To keep this pretty standardized, streamlined. Hearing no questions.
Jeff has his hand up.
Oh. There we go. Sorry, Commissioner, through the chair would ask.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Anthony, just curious, and this may show my ignorance with all this, but how many coins have been minted versus burned? And then is there some kind of report that shows like the volume that, how much these coins are churning, or they're not just, I'm assuming they're not just being bought and then sitting somewhere. So are we seeing how much activity is actually occurring with our coins? Tokens?
Through the chair, great question, Commissioner Wallace. Couple things. One is we have not had any redemptions yet, so everything we've issued has stayed in circulation. The only redemptions have been the ones that we have done as part of our testing to make sure that redemption flow works as intended. And we mean that for both the tech side and for the financial rails as well, through Franklin Templeton as our custodian and investment manager. In terms of the volumes, this is one of the things I flagged during our conversation last month, which is if you look at the volumes that are on Kraken, those are kind of artificially low. I'm not going to put a percentage on it. But what I will note is what you see on Kraken, whether that's the dollar, front for dollars or front for USDC, that really only, the 24-hour volume they show there really only reflects what's being withdrawn from the Kraken exchange. The actual volume is taking place in the Kraken hot wallet. So we don't have visibility into this at this time. We can certainly work to get more of that. And again, as this grows, we'd expect there to be more volume. But what I will say is in terms of tokens and utilization, they are being utilized as we want them to. I will make a note here that just last weekend or 2 weeks ago here in Cheyenne, we went to Cafe Central. We had a little bit of a team outing and we were buying our coffee and drinks with front tokens because it's integrated through the Rain application into Apple Pay. So you can do tap to pay with Frontier tokens and spend them at Target and your local coffee shop, and that's all already exists. So we're working to get to kind of figure out how the intelligence works. We can see more of what's happening behind the scenes. But those are uses that are saving both the purchasers and the retailers dollars.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We're moving on. Okay. Just a couple notes on the budget session that is currently ongoing. That session did start 10 days ago with the governor's state of the state. I will note we did this team and this effort did get a shout out in the governor's state of the state for all the work that we have done and the notice that we're receiving. And I would like to just congratulate both the team and the commissioners for all of the hard work that's gone into that to get that recognition. So thank you for being part of this world first. Since then, we've had a couple of bills going back and forth. There's really two tracks here. One is the budget bill itself. One is the Stable Token Act amendments. So to start with the budget bill, this is something that gets initially drafted by the Joint Appropriations Committee. As many of you on this call already know, the Joint Appropriations Committee recommended significant cuts throughout the entire state, affecting pretty much all agencies. As of Tuesday morning, in the Senate, there was an amendment to the budget bill to restore the governor's recommendation in full, including the $8.1 million BFY 27 budget for the Stable Token Commission. And that amendment did pass. So the Senate is now going through on third reading, kind of agency by agency, whether they want to make additional cuts or add content in. But they're working from the governor's recommendation, which is where this commission will be funded. In the House, there was a similar motion to restore the governor's recommendations across all the agencies. That did not pass, and candidly, not much is passing out of the House. So we have not had a amendment for the Stable Token Commission read in the House yet. The assumption is that will be on third reading, which I believe will take place, if not today, then tomorrow. So we will be monitoring that very closely, and I will keep the commission informed as we move forward around the processes that are in place around about joint conference committee, or JCC, which is how the budget bill that the Senate comes up with and the budget bill that the House comes up with get negotiated. So more to come there. If we have the same funding in both chambers, we're essentially outside that process and we're kind of locked in. If there are changes or differences between those two chambers, where everything's up for discussion, but more to come on all of that. Moving over to the Stable Token Act amendments that are currently Senate File 21. Those already came out of the Select Committee in September, so we've already discussed those. That's where we would have the ability to have a 2A7 fund, the ability to take federal grants or charitable contributions, and then it would amend what we call the cascade, the flow of funds, once interest income starts coming back to the committee based on the holdings and the reserves for the front token. The amendments would allow the agency to become self-sufficient first. So we kind of extinguish our obligation to the state and say, this is how much we have to operate for the next cycle. We pay back our obligation to the general fund, which is the dollars spent to date, which is that $3 million-ish dollar number. We could do that first, and then we could over collateralize however much we need to before funds come back to the school foundation program, which is probably a more clean way to do this, as I had flagged along the way. Some of the expected timing variances, you can be in a position where you have a high market cap stable token, but you're not returning anything back to the state. And this would mitigate that risk. So I will note that the Stable Token Act amendments did pass introduction in the Senate with a 2/3 vote during the budget session. That then went to the Minerals Committee yesterday afternoon. So I helped present and testify in support of that bill on the ask of co-chairman Chris Rolfus, Select Committee, and those amendments did pass as well. So now we have the version of the Stable Token Act amendments that went through, and then there are amendments to that bill, which do the key thing it does is creates the liquidity fund account in statute. Because that's something we did through rulemaking as kind of a carve out of the trust account, but having two individual and legally distinct accounts will be much cleaner for everyone involved. So now we can definitively say that if it's the trust account, this is for the benefit of the token holders. It's the one-to-one backing of a front token. Great. Now this over collateralized portion will formally live in the liquidity fund account. That's the over collateralization. That's the commission's money. It can come back to the state. It can top off the trust account if need be at any time. But that would all be made much more clear. And those are all public. So I've shared those with the commission along the way. And I will pause there because I'll keep monitoring all of these and keep the commission informed as we move forward on all of the legislation in front of us. But those are the two bills that predominantly impact us I wanted to call out. So any questions on any of that?
None on that, Anthony, but I do have kind of some updates on maybe some Section 300s that might be coming in. And one's kind of interesting from Senator Hicks. Of course, he wanted to buy $18 million worth of gold and put it in a reserve. And so I said, you know, Larry, why don't you make sure that we can use that $18 million of gold, you know, to basically back the stable token up to 1% of our excess. And so he was mulling that over. I don't know whether it got in his Section 300, but I think that he's definitely wants to try to get some gold for a gold token, or perhaps, you know, like if you had $18 million of excess in your 2%, you know, that would be the gold reserve would throw another $18 million in, you know, that would just basically backing it a 50-50 treasuries in gold. So I don't know how far that's going to go, but I think that would have some legs with the gold bugs over there in the Senate and a few other folks, you know. And I did say something about Bob Ide was wanting to do some gold thing too. And I says, well, you know, why don't you put you know, a half ounce or something like that for, you know, to back it up one to one in that. And so both of them are kind of on the same line with being able to put some gold behind the stable token, either in a separate stable token or perhaps to I guess enhance our reserve, and that would let us, you know, the reserve grow twice as fast, you know, at least to that point. So it's some interesting concepts that they're talking about. So if you get a chance, you know, we'll keep an eye on that, and Larry might need to have a discussion with him if he's got anything in there that says about stable tokens.
Thank you for flagging that, Commissioner Meyer. I will certainly be on the lookout for that. I'm assuming there'll be a 300 series footnote on third reading amendments. So I'll be on the lookout for that. Happy to put a phone call in.
Yeah.
You know, I think even if that doesn't go forward, having the conversation will help about broadening the basket of permitted investments over time, right? Again, some of the concern that's come up in the select committee in previous conversations has been when interest rates drop on the treasuries, how will we continue to substantiate the program and bring the returns back to the state? So I'm not putting an opinion out on that right now, but I think that'd be a helpful dialogue to have either way.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Commission.
Do we have anything new on the I guess a contract development for white labels or any other partners? And you know, I read some interesting structures that Trump family had with all of their crypto stuff, and I didn't know whether or not, you know, the white labels would almost follow that same type of organizational structure that you saw, that those folks actually received a benefit from all of the transactions, and whether that would be in that type of a block or structure, or is that too early to even contemplate, or these are all kind of topics that we want to talk about in a executive session?
So through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, a couple things, from a technical perspective, we're pretty confident that we have the platform to do this. We, through Fireblocks, we've already looked at our ability to spin up different wallets on behalf of other agencies in the state or on behalf of other states and their respective agencies. So the tech piece, I think, is sufficient. If you look at the amendment to Senate File 21, one of the things that was added by the Minerals Committee was a specific and explicit authority to enter into agreements with other states for the purposes of issuing Wyoming stable tokens. Now, we'll call something else for a different state. And there is a perspective out there that we could do that today anyway, but it's better to have that explicit authority to do so. And I will say personally, I have spoken to over a dozen states and territories at this point who have some amount of interest, whether it's just learning more or moving towards issuance. We've talked to a few of them, and there's more to come.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some way, whether we're partnering with banks or financial institutions within the state or states outside, that in that partnership, people won't want a partnership unless there's some benefit to them. And I would guess there could be some legal contract that would allow them to have that benefit that wouldn't necessarily look like it was a yield-bearing instrument. Is that the correct assumption?
Through the chair, Commissioner Meyer, I think we could certainly have a separate conversation about some of the details here, but I think what we would think about for commercial agreements would be kind of like a revenue share, sharing a percentage of the interest that we're generating based on the underlying reserves. When we start thinking about yield, and I flagged some prior conversations, a straight APY based product is going to be hard to commit to when we don't know at which point in time we're going to be over collateralized and be able to actually disseminate interest. And of course, we must remember we do need to return funds to the state first. So what's that line where we say we've returned X to the state? We know that this will be more popular with a interest-bearing component to it. So even if we give some portion of the revenues away, it's still better off for the state going that route. So there's a lot for us to figure out when it comes to that.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have to distribute the gross revenues. We'd actually be distributing the net revenues because it was basically a contract for services almost.
Right. I would agree with that.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, I will get us towards the outro here. So in terms of next steps, one of the things our team is working on, specifically our Chief Risk Compliance Officer, Deborah Brooks, is the legal order policy. This is downstream of our token management rules about interdiction, i.e. the freeze and seize. We already have carved out at a high level our authority to do that or not to take those actions. Beyond that, we do need to have specific policies in place about the delivery of subpoenas and how we respond to different legal actions. That is something we're working on with the Attorney General's office. We would expect that document to be privileged, and we will get guidance from the AG on that. But I would assume in our March meeting, we will review that in executive session. Again, we'll review the documents in that session, but all of our motions will be taken back in the public forum. So we'll come back to that one. The second item in terms of next steps is the daily attestation demonstration. So we did share the attestation report. Currently, we're doing that on a monthly basis, but we are working with our partners at the network firm as well as Fiduciary Trust to move us towards daily attestations, which will both be reports that we sign off on, as well as a page on our website that will have in real time, essentially the fiat data, how much cash we have, repos, treasuries, and the QSIPs thereof, compared against in real time the amount of front tokens on any given blockchain. Then they could see the circulation, you could see the backing, you could see the over collateralization, and several other checks in at least on a daily basis to start. And the goal for us is to get more towards intraday and then towards real time. So we are looking to be one of the most, if not the most transparent issuer in this space. And we are happy to share that with the commission coming soon. And the last thing that I did not put on the agenda, but wanted to flag for the commission, especially following last month's discussion around rules. If you recall, the governor made a comment around the legislature's requirement as of July 1st of 2026 that they will have to review rules as well. And as far as I know, there's no timeline on that, so we could kind of gum up the works a little bit. We've got our reserve management rules through. We've got our token management rules through. From my perspective, both of those will likely need to be updated following the completion of this budget session, because if the Stable Token Act amendments go through, that will, at a minimum, update our basket of permitted investments, right? Because it's a 2A7 fund is one of the things we could avail ourselves of. That will need to be cascaded into the rules. And then we'd also need to have a conversation if we're allowed to take charitable contributions, federal grants. We're going to need to create rules around that, i.e., which, if it comes in the form of digital assets, which ones we'll be able to take in, whether that becomes its own rule set or whether that becomes an amendment to Chapter 6 of the token management rules as well. These are for discussion, but the goal for our team is once we have an understanding of where the Stable Token Act amendments will net out, we will begin work on that immediately and expeditiously, because we want to get as much of this process done before that July 1st date. Just net simply adds more steps to the process. So that's one of the things that I didn't put on here, but was, as we were talking about, those token rules just came to mind. So I want to bring that up. Any questions on next steps and what we expect to review during next month's conversation? Okay. Hearing none, I will just bring us through our upcoming meetings and events. So our next meeting will be on March 12th. We'll be back in the Capitol. Again, thank you for your flexibility today while the session is ongoing. If the session is still ongoing on March 12th and extra days are deployed because the legislature does have some extra days in reserve, we will let you know as soon as we are aware of that happening. The meeting after that is April 16th, but between those, I will be on a panel at the DC Blockchain Summit in March 17th and 18th. I am, going back to Commissioner Meyer's points, I am looking to meet with a bunch of state representatives there to discuss the work we've been doing and bring them up to speed kind of in one shot about that. And then, Madam Chairman, the last thing on the agenda is public comment. I've already read our disclaimer here about 3 minutes per speaking party, 1 question from online participant, and the decorum rules. So with that all said, I'm happy to stand for any questions, but Madam Chairman, that is my update for today.
Great. Any other comments from the commissioners before we move to public comment? And Steph, do we have anyone online that would like to make public comment?
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay. Okay, I see Jan Hansen. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, and we're happy to hear your public comment.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I would like to make a few public comments. I am probably one of the only outspoken opponents to the complete endeavor of this commission using our public dollars for a volatile and highly risky capital venture. And I am probably the most outspoken one that you hear. I know Treasurer Meyer has heard from us at the few meetings already, and so anyway, I just wanted to voice my disappointment in this committee going forward with this, and hoping that you will find a way to unwind it. And I hope you have that in the back of your minds as you go forward with this thing. That you figure out a way to unwind all of this stuff that you have been doing. So. Let's see if I had anything else. Anyway, so I wanted to voice my opposition to all of this that you're doing. I also don't understand, excuse me, why Director Apollo can't answer how many stable tokens have been minted. I don't understand why you don't have that number at the top of your head. I understand it's hidden with the Kraken module, but you should know that number. So why don't you share that with us if you can, please? And that's really all I have to say, and that's my question. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Director Apollo, any follow-up?
Madam Chairman, happy to. Ms. Hanson, thank you for your comment. I have discussed multiple times during the course of this call the amount of Frontier tokens in circulation, which is 1,465,055 tokens. That number is part of our attestation report, which we shared during this conversation. It is a number that we share in our attestation reports that are on our website. We post those on social media. I've seen your responses to them. So I know you have access to that information as soon as we post it. And again, what I had just mentioned a moment ago about the daily attestation, we are looking to not only put out these reports on a more frequent basis and be more transparent in that way, but also to integrate that to our website. So you would be able to go to stabletoken.wyo.gov any day and see all of those numbers. So again, recognizing your comment on social media to me from before, which you've referenced in your testimony today, those numbers are public, and as well as the amount of interest income that's generated, as well as the amount of funding that we've spent. And all of that is in the public realm, and we put it there every month.
Thanks, Director Apollo. Stephanie, do we have anyone else online that would like to provide public comment?
Yes, we do.
Okay. We have a Maggie Wisniewski, and I apologize if I've said your name incorrectly, but if you can go ahead and unmute yourself and provide us with your public comment.
Thank you. And no, you did just fine. Thank you, Ms. Racines. Folks, you've constantly referred to yourself as an agency. And that's a little concerning to me because as an agency, it seems like that would give you the authority to write your own policy, and that you're, looking forward, you are playing with our taxpayers' dollars. And, you seem to want to, with some of the bills going through, it seems like you want to move away from any oversight. And there are a few folks that are following this statewide, and that is terribly concerning. Secondly, through this whole entire meeting, there was no mention of monies going to the school fund. I mean, that was your big campaign when this first started, 5-6 years ago? So, thirdly, it seems like you guys are trying to put our local community banks out of business. Is this the role of our government to compete in a private market? Come on, guys. And what I see with the research, there was a 39-page bill. I think it was Senate File 160. And going through the definitions, I think I made it through the first page. Just researching the definitions could curl your hair. It was devastating. So, sorry, Director Apollo, no offense. But anyways, what you guys are doing is criminal, and yet it seems like you're trying to get everybody on board. I will get more specifics. I'm a little out of my league this morning, but I don't know. But it all comes down to money, money, money. And you know what? This is our taxpayer dollars. I think we have. Anyway, I've had my say.
Yeah, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead, Treasurer.
I'll push back on the word criminal. We're doing everything within the law, and so we're not doing anything outside of the law. So there's no criminality attached to the efforts that we are doing. And as far as the community banks, we have a community banker on the commission, and communicates with us. from my perspective, you've got the great big banks like JP Morgan and some of the other ones that have stable tokens. And what we're trying to do is to allow, total access to the community banks with the stable token. So when these, branches in Wyoming, JP Morgan Chase has several branches in Wyoming. When they come in here and essentially without any knowledge of community, any knowledge of Wyoming values, and compete headlong against our community banks, we want them to be able to have access to technology that they can go step for step for them. And and try to make our community banks more successful with this technology. And as you can well appreciate, this has taken a long time to get to the starting line. And frankly, community banks just don't have the resources to do that. So the Treasurer's Office has always worked, very closely with the community banks. We have a time deposit account program that's administered through my office with the Board of Deposits, which is your top 5 elected officials, and we try to keep liquidity into the banking sector so they can actually make loans to the businesses and the people in their communities. And so, we're trying to work hand in hand. I know there was a lot of angst, I think, with community banks, because I think to a certain point that if we were competing head to head with community bankers without the ability for them to partner with us, I could agree with you. But we're trying to partner with them and have them be more profitable and not be a partner with them.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. If I could interject, I've had the opportunity to speak with one of our local bankers here. And just in idle curiosity, I was asking her, she's been in the business about 20 years. And I said, there's a few of us gals that follow the Wyoming stable token, i.e. Frontier token. I said, as a banker, what's your take? Holy cow, 45 minutes of rants and ravings about the fraud. Now, this is in Sheridan, Wyoming. So we have, I believe, a kiosk. Now, I don't believe the stable token is available, but a kiosk up at one of our gas stations off Highway 90. So much fraud with the Wyoming stable token. And
Madam Chairman, point of order on this.
yes, sir.
We're talking about, respectfully, we're talking about fraud with a stable token that's not available in the machine you're referring to. Okay. I also need to be specific. You've brought up now multiple bills that have nothing to do with this commission. HB 160, the digital token taxonomy, did not come out of this commission, nor did it come out of the Select Committee on Blockchain that we interact with. That was an individually sponsored bill. The virtual kiosk bill, I do believe, came out of the Select Committee on Blockchain, but that is not one that we opine on. And to be clear, under the executive branch, we're not able to lobby ourselves for these changes or these bills anyway. We can simply educate the legislature on our position from what we're seeing on the ground. So when there are references being made to moving away from oversight, I'm not seeing that on our side, but it is important to remember and recognize that the statutes you're referring to are not being brought forth from this commission. That is the work of the legislature. And there is a big gap between what they're able to do with state law that we have to abide by. We can't make that law. That's on them. We just abide by it. So I want to make that very clear because there's been multiple references to criminality.
Yes, sir.
On this, and that is just not factually accurate.
And Madam Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Treasurer.
One thing that I want you to be definitely aware of is that the banks in our state have asked for two more auditors so they can look over anything that the banks do and to make sure that their books are in order. And the banks actually pay for these auditors. And the legislature, for whatever reason, the two positions that the bankers wanted for accountants, to keep track of them, they denied them. And so, if you have a chance, and I think that you're an intelligent, outspoken woman, make sure that the legislature knows that. We're walking hand in hand with the banks on this one. I've told the legislators in an address that we did with them earlier this year is that this is something that is basically looking out for these things that you're concerned with. As this economy grows and there's more and more banks from national banks and people that come in here, we've got to have Wyoming people looking after it. And for whatever reason, they decided that they were going to cut them. So, talk to your legislators and your representatives about the need, for oversight, whether it's in the banks or whether it's in any other areas of financial endeavors. That there's that oversight.
Can I ask you? Thank you, Mr. Treasurer Meyer.
Yeah.
May I ask you the rulemaking oversight on July 1st that you referenced? Is that communication open to the public?
Oh, yeah, it would be. It would be. And I'll tell you what the rule oversight is now, is that in the process, because I was in the legislature for 24 years, which the legislature really, I think, with the exception of my committee and a couple others, probably didn't implement, is that every standing committee, if they have a bill that goes through the process, either in the House or the Senate, the rules that are made, and usually the rules aren't done until next fall. That the standing committee is supposed to look at every one of those rules and opine on them. And if there's problems with it, they either ask the agency, to reconsider and change that, or if it's something that's ambiguous in the law, the legislature will write a bill to correct it. And in fact, the governor, if he sees something, he has the ability to line item veto any rule that does not follow the intent of the legislation. So there's a lot of oversight today, and the legislature evidently didn't know about this and hadn't been doing it. So now they want to have more oversight, which essentially it ends up being the same thing, that if it's within a rule that's within the intent of the legislation, that rule would most likely stand, and they would have to write a law to basically clarify what their intent was. And so, the process is already in there. This is going to be another process. I hope the legislators, because it'll be in statute and they're going to have some legislative authority, which they already have the legislative authority by rules or joint rules that they could do now. But this will make it clearer, I think. So, and the rule process is a very cumbersome thing. There's lots and lots of public comment. And unfortunately, you really only have a lot of times lobbyists or industry groups that will actually comment. So, the transparency in that is there, but it's a lot of times it's hard for people to understand what's going in the legislative process, and in the rulemaking process is probably even more cumbersome. So I'm glad there's folks like you that really want to dig into the weeds. I'm kind of a weeds person myself, and that'll actually make the process more transparent. And I think and that's what we need is more transparency and community
Agreed.
service.
One last question. Can you address the issue of why you refer to yourself as agencies when actually I believe you're a commission?
Sure, I can address that, Miss Wisniewski. And again, we the commission only have the power that the legislature gives us or doesn't give us. And they created an agency let me back up. In order to have the oversight of this body in the budget, we are assigned an agency and an agency number. So the commission refers, of course, to the body of elected officials and appointees that we are actually managing decisions. The agency itself would refer to staff and the actual operations of the token. So that again, and we're not trying to throw everything at the legislature, but I think the point and that is trying to be made is this entire operation was put into law by the legislature. So it was created by the legislature. We are required to be doing what we are doing.
Thank you. I'll do some research on that. Thanks so much, Ms. Racine.
Yes, and please keep engaging with us. And like the treasurer said, engage with your local legislators as well, because again, all of our power or lack thereof is derived from the statutes that they put into place.
And also, how are we doing with the monies going to the schools? Do we forecast what that's going to look like? I mean, because that was your stand when you guys started this mess.
Thanks for that question. Just another little correction. No one on this commission started the commission. So that was the legislature that passed a law to create this and mandate that. There is a tip that eventually goes into the schools when a certain cap is met, where the token has only been out for 6 weeks. That has not been met. But Anthony, do you want to add anything to that?
Madam Chairman, I think we've well highlighted in this meeting and others the cascade of funding, right? We take the dollars in, it gets invested in treasuries. Those provide interest on an annual basis. So there's a bit of a time lag there. The token that needs to be over collateralized. The agency needs to be made self-sufficient. So there is no general fund or taxpayer obligation. And then funds go back to the school foundation fund. So that is a long-tailed intent. That is not something that's going to happen in 6 weeks of launching a world first financial program.
Thank you, Director. Okay.
That covers it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and Maggie, whenever you want to give me a call, if you got some issues on different bills or have some concerns, I get up in different parts. I know I spent about 6 hours in Sheridan here a couple of months ago, and I'm welcome your input. And as we go through this interim and different things, there's things that we can agree on and things that I can information that I can help you with. Like I say, I was a senator for 24 years and this job for 7. So I got a little background and experience, and welcome to share that with you.
Thank you, Treasurer. Okay, Stephanie, do we have anyone else online to provide public comment?
No, it does not look like there's anyone else.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jeff, before you bounce, could you give me a call after this? I want to talk to you about some WildStar things or different things, and just find out how we can get something that's functional with for you bankers. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do.
Anything else to come before the commission before we adjourn? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Yeah,
Opposed?
823-2366, Jeff. 823-2366.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned.
See you guys.
Thank you all.
you.
Bye.